Hello, welcome to our program's Perspective. I'm your host, Neeka Anderson-Issacs.
And I'm Cleo Huggins. Welcome to the program. We bring you perspectives from the different business houses and other concerns in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This evening is the time to hear the perspective of the manager of the Solid Waste Management Unit, Winsbert Quow. Winsbert, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, and it's great to be here to share my view on what waste management is in St. Vincent.
So before you tell us all about solid waste management, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Right. Well, professionally, I've been working with the CWSA since 2002, roughly 12 years. I have a bachelor's in civil engineering and a master's in business administration. For the last 9 years, I've been managing the solid waste unit. A little bit about myself outside of work. I lead a church as well. I've been doing that for the last 4 years. And I love music. I play the guitar.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Any special type of music?
I like all forms of music. For me, it is the story and the craftsmanship behind the music that gets me, not necessarily the genre.
Do you write?
I write a little bit. Before I was more into leading the church, I actually thought I would have been a soca singer. I was actually working on that in Trinidad before I got back.
In another program, I think we need to bring all of these soca artists who never were into the limelight.
Great.
But you
Thank
lead
you
a
so
church
much.
in terms of your ordained minister or just a pastor? What exactly?
Yes, I'm appointed to lead a church in St. Vincent. So mainly in the area of preaching and teaching, studying the Bible and teaching. I love it, and in fact, it actually has taught me a lot about what it really means to be a hard worker. There's a scripture that says, whatever you do, just give it your best shot, as if working for God and not men. So I've always internalized that scripture, and I've been putting it into practice in my work, and I think it has been it has helped me in terms of my academic and professional success.
So to take your teaching a little bit further, teach us about solid waste management.
All right, let's talk a little bit about garbage. Yeah, that's what we're here for, right?
A lot of rubbish talk.
Great, let's talk garbage. Well, basically, we operate in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have operations on mainland St. Vincent and on the islands of Bequia, Canawan, and Union Island. We have about 70 people providing this service. 70 people. The service of collection, that means picking up the garbage, and disposal. That means making sure that it's taken care of properly. We have about 8 private contractors as well in our service. So we do have staff in the CWS, and we do also have some private contractors.
And you manage all the staff?
Yes, basically.
What about a private contractor?
We manage them too. We have contracts that we give out to them with certain specifications, and we make sure that they hold to those. So we manage those as well. They manage their own staff, but we manage the contract.
And I would believe that there are legislation in place that guides this process, the handling and how this is done?
Yes. Basically, there is the Waste Management Act, National Waste Management Act. That act is number 31 of 2000. And it really designates the CWSA as the National Solid Waste Management Authority. And it gives us the right to contract out our services to private contractors who we deem qualified to perform the service.
We talk about solid waste. Let's help persons who are watching let's break it down for them. So the common one, what is solid waste?
Well, solid waste basically is any item that you discard. We create garbage in our homes and we discard it and become solid waste. But we have to manage that. We have to take care of it.
We have to take care of garbage.
We produce in St. Vincent about 44 million kilograms of garbage every year. Now, if you were to make that into pounds, that's like 88 million pounds of garbage. So if we don't take care of that, it could become a problem. So our job as the Solid Waste Management Authority is to make sure that waste is taken care of in such a way that it does not negatively impact the environment and our lives. So that's what we do. In fact, we are in the business of saving lives, I believe.
How so?
Well, we would appreciate that if we have this environment that we live in, this is where we live, and if we don't take care of it, it becomes somewhat toxic. If you, for example, if you dispose of your plastics and you throw them in the drains and chemicals in the drains, they end up in the sea, right? And we are a nation that loves to eat our fish, and if our fish is contaminated by that and we eat it, then we end up killing ourselves. So if we don't intercept that garbage, then we have a problem.
Winsbert, how effective would you say you are? I have seen the bottles in the sea, the plastic bags coming down the banks, the cars across the streets. How effective would you say you are?
Well, in order for us to do our jobs properly, we need collaboration from the public as well. We say we have 100% coverage of St. Vincent and the islands upon which we operate, meaning that we provide our residents with at least a once per week garbage collection service. Here on St. Vincent's once per week, and it's twice per week in the Grenadines. So we do that, and our trucks go around. When I was counting today, and we have about 17 trucks throughout the operations, both from us and the private contractors that provide this service on a regular basis. In fact, we operate the largest trucking operation in the country. And so we do that. People have access to the service. Whether or not they use it properly is another problem. You know, sometimes people don't put their garbage out when they should, or they don't put it where they should, and it ends up in the environment. So we can say that we do a fairly good job with the resources that we have, but we need to work more on having the cooperation.
So it's a partnership, and we are not living up to our end of the deal.
Well, we all need to do better. You know, as the solid waste unit, we continue to examine where we could improve.
But as consumers of the services,
we are also calling on our people to just comply with the basic rules that are in place.
Is there a distinction between what you would deal with and what is left to your private contractors? For example, would you deal with like the plastics and the general household waste, and is the other stuff like the refrigerators and the cars and those things left to someone else?
Well, basically, both ourselves and the private contractors, we do the same function. It's just that we operate in different areas. Like for example, in St. Vincent, we have roughly half of our collection areas privatized, which are more the far regions, like in Georgetown, Fancy, and those areas, and Chateaubelair. From Chateaubelair all the way up to Kingstown is privatized, and then we have from Fancy all the way down to about Brighton being privatized. And those areas that are Kingstown and the surrounding, we do that. So we all do the same functions. We all collect all types of household garbage as well as white goods, and bring them to the landfill facility, also in the Grenadines. So it's both our private contractors and ourselves do basically the same functions, but there are private business entities not contracted by us who have seen it an opportunity to get into recycling of metal and plastics, and they also help with the overall aspect of waste management by extracting those things out of the environment as well for us.
Is it mandatory in cases where, for example, there is a construction that the garbage has to be, whether you have to contact the CWSA to assist in that process, or they have to deliver the garbage or stuff to the landfill? What is that process?
It's not mandatory that you have to contact us. Our landfills are open access to the public. If you are constructing a building and you have some debris from your demolition, you can hire a private truck and they can take it to the landfill. The landfill in St. Vincent open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Mondays to Saturdays. You don't need us, but you can call us and we can give you a specialized service where we'll bring perhaps what we call a skip, which is a large metal waste container, and we could drop it for you and you can fill it up and we can collect it upon your request. Or we can deploy a truck to do that for you.
Is there a cost attached to that?
Yes, there is a cost. There's a cost because obviously, there's a cost to us to come to your home and collect that special waste. But we have what we have called island-wide white goods collection service that we offer twice per year. That we do it basically for free, or we can say it's covered within the monthly charge that you are charged on your water bill. But we announce when we are doing that, and so if you have your fridges or your stoves that you have discarded, you can put them out on those days, and we collect them for you twice per year.
Winsbert, you said you have island-wide coverage. There's no distinction between what services are offered in the Grenadines, in Kingstown, and in the other rural areas.
Right. Yeah.
What is it that we need to do as consumers to play a better role in the solid waste management project?
Well, as a homeowner, you just simply need to know when is your collection day, because we collect in different areas throughout the week, and you just need to know where your collection point is, and you take your garbage there, and you would do us a big favor. I think simply because of our topography and the road network, there are some areas where our trucks just cannot go. It's not motorable. So we try as far as possible to provide a curbside service where we come by your gate and collect that. But not every area in St. Vincent is like Kiangan, where you can just pull up and as well, the roads are wide enough and it's well laid out. So in those areas where folks have to do a little bit more traveling with their garbage, sometimes we find problems where people don't want to make that extra step, and they may throw it over a bankside and so forth.
So where would this information be available as to what are the collection points and what are the days and how we can get from our homes to these collection points?
Well, you can call our offices and you will get, based on where you are, they will tell you which day is your collection day. And we normally ask customers to put out their garbage by 6 a.m. And we try to collect it before 12 p.m. So that, we collect it as short as possible. And for most areas now in St. Vincent, it's like clockwork. Everybody knows when, their collection day is. I think even though people know it, sometimes it's just a matter of compliance.
Thanks, Winsbert. On that housekeeping note, we'll wrap this segment up and we'll be right back with Perspectives after this.
With 2/3 of the Earth's surface covered by water and the human body consisting of 75%, it is clear that water is one of the prime elements responsible for life on Earth. Why waste it? Start conserving water today. A message from the Central Water and Sewage Authority. When you irresponsibly discard your waste, that's not all you do. You take part in destroying the environment. We want to enjoy a clean, fresh and green St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Don't you? Litter not only makes our environment unsightly, time and money is wasted collecting it. Avoid littering. A message from the Solid Waste Management Unit.
Welcome back to Perspectives. We have in our presence here joining our program Mr. Dwight Hillocks, and he's the founder of All Island Recycling. And he's going to, before he gets into the nitty-gritty of what he does, share a little bit about himself with us. Welcome, Mr. Hillocks.
Well, thanks for having me.
Right, so you're going to tell me a little bit about who you are.
I'm by profession a software developer for 27 years in the San Francisco Bay Area. We were responsible for producing America's #1 litigation support software, and my responsibilities was to lead teams in the US, India, in maintaining that edge while I was there.
But now you're in the recycle business.
Yeah, I'm in the recycling business. I got tired of computers. After 27 years, I made a conscious decision to detach from computers, and
you just got up one day and decided, I'm
logging out.
I'm logging out.
Yeah. Time to power the systems down. It wasn't as fun as it was in the beginning.
And recycling is fun?
Well, I'll tell you how that is in a bit. But after getting away from the computers, it's like, I want a challenge. I wasn't challenging anymore, but I was enthused by what was happening here. I didn't know anything about this stuff, and I wanted to know more about it. And by coming to St. Vincent, I had the opportunity to embark upon recycled materials by purchasing some scrap. And that scrap created that path for me to start buying scrap from other islands.
You purchased scrap to use?
Scrap to be sent back to the mill so they can be recycled and come back, give them another life, so to speak. Piece of metal may return as a pen or something that's metal based, for example.
But who does that though, Dwight?
Well, it's above ground mining, as opposed to digging into the trenches. It reduces cost, believe it or not, for the manufacturers. So that's one of the efforts that are necessary to bring the cost of items to consumers around the world, while they still continue to mine beneath the ground. This is above ground mining. And I wasn't the first, believe me. I came and I met guys who were doing this for many, many decades prior to me. And because of the computers, it took me down this particular path, which opened up this new world for me.
So,
and I'm still.
Dwight, we're skirting around the issue and we were just touching around the edges. What exactly is it that you're involved in terms of your recycling project?
Presently, primary focus is on harvesting, facilitating the empties that the harvesters in this case the public sector, who are removing the empties from the drains, the landfills. Some people are beginning to separate them in the houses so they can redeem them, because there's a value associated with that particular empty. And by bringing them to our facility in Camden Park, they can get cash for those empties.
And when you say empties, what are you referring to specifically?
Beverage plastic bottles and aluminum beverage cans specifically. In addition to that, we have other types of recyclables such as car batteries, which is considered non-ferrous items, a little brass, a little aluminum, etc., that people may find within their yards or wherever they get it from.
So you're into the business of converting waste into wealth, not just
We're
for
taking
you,
the mess
but
out
for
of
the,
waste.
the harvesters as well.
But it's not just wealth for me. Many people.
That's what I'm saying, for the harvesters as well. So we benefit and you benefit because we get
win-win
something for our
situation.
empties.
Exactly. The end result is a cleaner environment. Everyone ends up placing a little bit more juice on the table to help them not choke while they have that breath.
Winsbert, I just want to ask you a question. So far we've dealt with two forms of waste management. We've dealt with the collection and the landfills, and we've dealt with recycling. Are there other forms of waste management?
Well, all of it is a part of moving towards what we call sustainable waste management. At its basic core, sustainable waste management is just making sure that we put as little as possible waste into our environment. That's what you're trying to do. By our mere existence, we create waste.
So recycling, by extension, is a form of sustainable.
It's a part of the sustainable waste management. We traditionally in St. Vincent, we do landfilling. And most countries, that's how we start off, with some form of waste management system, with landfilling. But we want to move away from that because you understand we have a very limited land space in St. Vincent. We're a small island, and even more so in the Grenadines, where islands are down to about 3 square miles. So we can continue to landfill.
So that means the initiative that Dwight is pushing forward, it ties into the direction that this country needs to go. Because if there's limited space, and then if we can use the solid waste that we have and make money from it, and make our environment much cleaner, then it's a win-win situation for everybody.
Yes, it's a win-win situation.
Is there anything else that can be done in addition to the recycling and the landfills? Well, use of landfills.
Yes, another thing that we talk about the 4 R's concept, reuse, reduce, recycle, and recover. So, oftentimes we try through our public education initiatives to get people to change their consumer habits. So for example, you can go to the supermarket and carry a reusable shopping bag instead of asking for plastic bags. That limits the amount of waste that you put into the environment. Things like the bottle return policy that the St. Vincent Brewery have. That's a part of reusing. And then, what Dwight is doing with Air Inc. is about recycling, because they're shipping out plastics to a foreign market and bringing in foreign exchange into the country.
So you actually pay persons to bring these items to...
Yeah, they're a workforce where the respective communities, whether it's in the rural districts, we have collection points for those that are unable to come to Camden Park. They can drop their empties at the closest collection point. The collection point, in turn, they have the responsibility to bring them to Camden Park. We then shred them. There's a process where we turn the bottles into cornflakes, like they call it flakes, in these massive super sacks, like equivalent to cement bags, and then they're shipped offshore to a plastic mill, giving that plastic now another life. It may return as a toothpick, toothbrush, whatever.
Clothing. It could return as clothing.
Exactly,
I have a tie that is made from plastic bottles.
That's interesting.
So we give it that extra life.
Yeah.
It would have been good for us to see
that
just
tie.
to
I know.
put some teeth into this whole thing.
Because basically some of your clothing could have been made from recycled plastic. Same material.
Dwight, how long ago did you start Air Inc.?
The company was founded in April of 2012 in St. Vincent, but we didn't start this until November 2013.
This is
The
the
redemption
MTs.
of the MTs, correct.
Okay, and how has that been going? Or what is the response like from the public?
The response has been going really well. We've had some speed bumps. Fortunately, many of them are behind us. But with solid waste, there's some collaboration between solid waste and ourselves, right? So we approach them, they direct us. We then have to go and knock on other doors because we can't do this by ourselves. So there needs to be this flow. But until there's that flow, we will be stifled, so to speak. But we are working on unclogging that blockage that we have right
You
now.
make the point that you can't do it by yourself. So there's Air Inc. and there's the Solid Waste
And
Management
there's the public
Unit.
as well. You know, everyone needs to get on board. All hands on deck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the children, they help us drive the message into the homes. You know, they're receptive to an understanding that, you know, we need to our environment needs to be clean. For example, they hear there's this awareness. They're driving along, Daddy throws the bottle out the window. Yeah, Daddy don't do that. So they helps take and condition the adults, so the ones that need the conditioning. The children know what they need to do.
But based on what you're saying, there's money to be made in this process. So
Yeah, there's for everyone, not just for us, the ones that are buying it. There's this low income strata, and by us putting money into the low income strata, they don't save anything. They put it right back into the economy, and that money bubbles up. So everybody gains from this. Though some folks may take empties to a shop, for example, purposes, to get food to eat. They all get money for the redemption of the empties. They may spend some or all of those funds back at the shop. We want to get to a point where some of those items that they've purchased, for example, sardine can or whatever that might be, they can clean it, take it back to the shop in exchange for something else, or cardboard, or whatever that might be. There's so many recyclables around us.
how long before you get back money from that? So if I take in some containers now, how long before I could get the money for what I have taken in?
Immediately, depending on the quantity. If it's beneath $100, you get cash. If it's over $100, you get a check.
Yeah. And of course, you know, Cleo, you talked about needing partners, and even one of our critical partners is the Ministry of Finance, because they've created financial instruments to allow an operation like Dwight's operation to thrive. For example, they implemented what you call the bottle levy policy, that there's a charge on the importation of plastic bottles, and you can get back a refund on that charge if you re-export it. So using that charge is what Dwight has been able to use to be able to sustain his business and to funnel some of that money down to some people who really need it.
Dwight does the recycling of plastic bottles, and you are using landfills. What other kinds of recycling are done in St. Vincent, and is there any support, like in the vein of the bottle levy, I beg your pardon, to support these other forms of recycling?
Well, and a major form that we do at CWSA is what we call composting. About 33% of the garbage that we get is green waste, simply because of our environment. And so we turn that into a material that is useful for the agriculture sector. We have equipment, we have a shredder that shreds green waste that comes in, and we have a process called windward composting, where we allow the material to break down over a period of time. And then we sell that material back to people who are into farming and other agricultural businesses. So that in a sense is helping with the recycling locally, and also recovering of some funds for operations.
Where do the exported recycled items go, and what happens to them?
The recycled items, the non-ferrous, which is the metals, that goes to Florida primarily. The other items...
To where?
Florida. South Florida, in
Okay.
the United States. And the other items is based on the commodity exchange. We look for the highest buyer. So based on, and it primarily brokers, so it may go to the Far East, Canada.
So there's much money in this business, man.
Yeah, well, it seems like.
Is there an opportunity for the exporting of compost as well?
Well, we have to get our production volumes up. I think because we're so much into agriculture in this, all that we produce is used locally. And just recently, my engineers and I were talking about even getting some advanced equipment that could turn even more material into compost. Because if you have certain types of equipment, you could even compost waste that comes from your septic tank and all that, and turn it into material that you can reuse in your gardens and so.
That's so
As rubbish as all of this is, it is really good information.
Good rubbish.
Good rubbish.
Yes.
Folks, this is Perspectives. We'll be right back after this.
The business of waste management has never been a prestigious job.
People in this field must have a deep appreciation of their country. They're not only improving the beauty, but
they're helping to preserve life. You can help.
Remember to always practice the 4 R's: recover, reuse, reduce, and recycle waste.
a message from the Central Water and Sewerage Authority, Solid Waste Management Unit.
Hey, Mr. B, I can't believe you put out the old drum, the pieces of galvanized, the pieces of wood by the side of the road. What do you mean the truck will pick them up? Did you call them and make the arrangement? No. The truck is not going to pick them up just so. You have to call and make the arrangement and pay a small fee. You have more? Listen, in future, call the people at Solid Waste, tell them what you have, they will tell you how much you have to pay. Okay? Yeah. Okay.
A message from the Central Water and Sewerage Authority, Solid Waste Management Unit.
Welcome back to Perspectives. We're enjoying the perspectives of Winsbert Quow. He's the manager of the Solid Waste Management Unit, and of Dwight Hillocks, the founder of Air Inc. Before we went to the break, we were actually discussing the different types of recycling that happens in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Well, not just recycling, but solid waste management. And Dwight actually gave us a bit of information about Air Inc. and the fact that he's into exporting. And, well, we also discussed a bit about composting, but so far the domestic consumption is taking care of that. Dwight, how often do you export from St. Vincent?
Presently, once a month, and it's our intentions to increase that real soon by the second quarter of this year.
So you see that there is actually room for that sort of development?
We intend to expand into other recyclables. There seems to be a natural progression into cardboard and additional plastics. Right now we only do beverage plastics, but there are other types of plastics such as the bleach bottle, the Tide, etc., which we intend to add to the mix as well.
What challenges have you experienced so far?
Understanding we're not pros at this, so we embarked upon a path here which we found ourselves stumping our toes quite a bit, and from that we've learned to improve upon our process in itself. Primarily the bottlenecks that we've had with the redemption program, where we had to suspend all buying because we ran into some issues between a couple of agencies. Government agencies, but fortunately they've come up with solutions, and then we're now moving forward.
Mm-hmm. This is like a fairly new thing for our country. As recalling that when we're doing our national development plan, one of the goals that we set out to do is re-engineering economic growth. And traditionally we were a country whose economy was based on agriculture and tourism, and now we are creating a green economy based on the export of garbage. And so a lot of our policymakers still have to be sort of brought up to speed, as to how we can do this. And that's why we're grateful for people like Dwight, who've had the experience on Florida, who've done software development in that area, that can come and even help with his process, what he's learned and what we know, to even educate some of our policymakers.
So how are you harnessing Dwight's experience with your own expertise to guide other people along that path to the green economy? Well,
when we have events like this, we sit down and we talk a lot. Every time Dwight is in St. Vincent, we have a conversation. He tells
Are
me
you developing perhaps some sort of procedure or guidelines
right.
that people can refer to?
Right. Like what he says, we're learning it as we go along too. As we, some of the instruments are already in place. We have the bottle levy, Act, we have even a levy that is charged on incoming vehicles that is supposed to be funneled towards these sort of programs.
Are you guys getting the necessary support? Are persons understanding the importance of this and coming on board to support it?
Yes, they are. I think, well, not as quickly as we would like, but we are seeing some changes. And I'm pretty sure as we continue to pluck away and as we continue to file away at the inefficiencies, we'll eventually get to where we want to be.
Why did you decide, after spending so much years in the United States, to come to St. Vincent? Is it a profitable business? Why SBG?
Well, what I'm doing now was primarily focused on St. Vincent. The non-ferrous, if we can go back there for a little bit, was between 16 islands. Just the focus was motivated by money, making money. Not until I saw the plastics floating on the water, I realized there's a greater good here. It's not just about money. And after doing further research, we realized that we can use this as a tool to help others, right? That's the real reward. It's not just about us. The more we put out there, it's like giving the rod. People have a lot of pride, okay? So we're giving them the rod so they can go fish themselves. So it's a win-win. They earn some money, we earn some money, we clean the environment.
Mm-hmm. And do you have plans of expanding this in SVG?
We are doing some testing in Grenadines. We are with some of the schools in Beckway. We're not pleased with the results, but we intend to revive that initiative in Beckway, in Northern Grenadines. Outside of Kingstown, we want to get into some of the school districts in the rural areas as well, so they can participate and with the other schools. We work with 16 schools out of 98 on the mainland.
So there's still lots of scope for development.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What sort of support have you been getting from the Solid Waste Management Unit?
Well, some of the barriers that we faced, we didn't know how we can get by them. And we had to consult Solid Waste so they can understand, hoping that they would have an answer for us. And just sharing with them our intentions. And they have the experience in terms of, some people have been down or have attempted to come down this path that we're on. And so they've seen mistakes other people have made, and we're kind enough to share those experiences with us so we can avoid them. So that in itself, it's priceless for us.
Mm-hmm. Winsbert, you spoke about the fact that the landfills are all filling up and the land area in St. Vincent is quite limited. We already have a recycling program underway. What are your plans to increase the take-up of the whole recycling and solid waste management among the private sector in St. Vincent?
Well, we do have like the some of the private sectors, people who are into like scrap metal and so forth. We do give them some support from time to time. When we collect scrap metal and take it to a landfill, they buy it from us and ship it out. So we do encourage them in that way. We also plan to expand this whole idea of sustainable waste management, starting in the Grenadines, especially putting it more in the Grenadines because they are at a more critical mass. I want to say that the landfills in St. Vincent, they've been designed to last maybe for the next 25 years or so, but we're not going to wait until 25 years before we start putting things in place to get out of landfilling totally, because when they are all filled up, where else would we go?
Pollution is such a, sorry to cut you off, pollution is such a serious problem still here, and with this that we're learning about now, it is a good solution to that problem. How do you plan to push this more to address this issue of pollution? Because how we take care of our environment in turn see how it takes care of us. And if there is also money to get from this, it is an incentive for persons to move in that direction. So do you have a plan as part of your management to get persons more directly involved into this kind of stuff?
Right. Like for example, when we're doing our sustainable project in the Grenadines, we actually are working with a community NGO that is going to set up a recycling facility on one of our sites on one of the islands on Beckway. And we are sort of helping in terms of even the public education. Like Dwight said, we are providing information, we're providing statistics. In fact, once people understand that there is a market out there for recyclables, we'll see a lot of private sector involvement in trying to get that done. While we ourselves also try to improve our operations in order to be able to better funnel some of that material into the private sector or even ship it overseas, like putting in certain machinery and equipment in our landfill at some point in the future.
If I go to your website, will I see a list of perhaps opportunities or projects that I could get involved in to support this whole reduce, reuse, recycle campaign?
You will see...
What guidance will I get from Solid Waste Management Unit?
Right. Well, what you would see, you may see some information on the waste management legislation, Waste Management Act number 31 of 2000. It's a beautifully written piece of legislation that guides anybody.
But Winsbert, really?
I think it's...
I'm a lazy person. I'm not going to read through the
legislation.
whole legislation.
From you mention the word legislation, some people home is going to be like, womp, womp.
Well, that is, see, that's the thing, because that's why we are sort of trying to help the private sector, because before the private sector could be like that.
But you think you're being aggressive enough? You don't think more needs to be done?
I think we can always do more. But it is a process. For example, you have to understand that waste management in St. Vincent is relatively young compared to other countries. There are some countries who have taken a half a century, even some developed countries, just to get people to separate. Of course, we're not going to take that long because we can learn from their mistakes. But sometimes we are very hard on ourselves and not understanding that we have gotten to a very, we are very far along already, being a very small country.
Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. So a lot of the larger countries are still attempting to separate. There's several types of separation, as I understand it. You have within the homes itself, there's within the public and the landfill. North America, for example, they're still trying to understand how they should do that on the streets. But we can learn from what they're not doing, that we can implement a lot easier. Yeah. We're hoping.
And as you speak to the public, I think it's important that we understand our role in the process and understand that St. Vincent and the CWSA and their management team is doing a tremendous job for a small country, for what we have achieved, even though there's still ways to go. And, Dwight has worked overseas and he understands the process and he has taken it here for us to understand that we have to give kudos to the efforts that are being done to get us to where we need to be. And we need to understand our role in the process and ensure that we do what we need to do to help in this process, because we cannot depend on Dwight and his company, and we cannot depend on just the CWSA and the work that they're doing, but it is a collective effort that we all need to do in order to achieve our goal and to be leaders in this front.
Definitely. So, Winsbert, the reason why I asked the question initially is because in our quest for re-engineering our economic growth, I think this is perhaps a very important area for us to be considering, given the size of St. Vincent, given the economic opportunities in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Is perhaps one of the easiest things for us to get involved in. And so I am just saying this to perhaps suggest that maybe we need to pull little things out of the legislation and put them forward to the general public. Sometimes, yes, we need to be spoon-fed, I admit, because I'm not going to read the legislation, but perhaps if I see something on your website, I can get a few of my friends together and get started.
Yeah, most of the times when persons come to me and say they want to get into the business of waste management, we really try to make them understand what it takes, because at our end, we want it to be sustainable. We don't want you to get into something and then you fall out. For example, if Dwight does not work out properly and he has about 4 million plastic bottles at his facility currently.
If it does not work out physically or work
if
out in the business.
something happens with his business.
It's not sustained.
If it's not sustained, if he has inventory, it comes back to the landfill. So anybody who's serious about getting into waste, because we've had several companies come here and said, we want to do something. Okay, what do you know about the country? Well, are you willing to do a study to see exactly what the waste types are and to see if it's feasible? And many of them fall out by the time they have to do the studies. And like what Dwight has said, when he came here, his mindset was, let me sit down, let me talk, let's see what is there. And not just from, I want to do this, but what kind of legislation is in place as well. So that when I start this business, there are no bottlenecks. And I think we've been learning from that is important to have the idea, but also to have the discipline to set up your business properly.
But that being said, we have come a long way. I remember when I was a child, there was a campaign, reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, something like that. And we used to hear it all the time. We've come a long way from there. So congratulations to you and Dwight, to you for taking the initiative to bring us to where we are today.
Thank you.
Perspectives, we'll be right back after this.
During the dry season, we at the Central Water and Sewage Authority urge you to conserve water. Remember, there are many ways to save water, and they all start with you. Clean vegetables in a stopped sink or in a pot, rather than letting the faucet run. This water can be reused to water plants. Wash only full loads in your washing machines. When washing your vehicle, use a bucket. Showering for a maximum of 4 minutes saves 1,000 gallons of water a month. Save water, save money.
A message from the Central Water and Sewage Authority.
Are you guilty of throwing your garbage over banks, along roadsides, in rivers, drains, and on vacant lots? If you are responsible for the pollution of our rivers, the defacing of our roadsides, and the proliferation of mosquitoes, rats, and other pests in our country. Protect our environment, save our country, save our lives.
A message from the Central Water and Sewage Authority, Solid Waste Management Unit.
Welcome back to Perspective. We have on our program, for those who didn't catch us from the beginning, Solid Waste Manager, the CWSA, Winsbert Quow, and we have Mr. Hillocks, and he is the founder of Air Inc. Now, you're going to tell me a little bit about the tangible benefits that between yourself, Air Inc., and the CWSA.
To begin with, we've installed some bins in Kingstown on Independence of 2013 in an effort to learn from what we need to do in terms of the frequency of picking up, emptying these bins, the hot spots in Kingstown. That was an initiative that we both partnered with. In addition to that, we installed 200 bins within 16 schools using a ratio of 1 for every 100 kids, primarily for the purpose of recycling. The bins in the street, they travel in pairs. There are about 20 locations, if I'm not mistaken, 40 bins altogether. And the recycle bins are only placed there in an effort to create some awareness in terms of recycling. But there's a lot of contamination. You find bottles, the mango seed, etc., all intermingled within both containers. But as people are becoming more aware of the recycling, is a value associated with these recyclables, primarily the plastics, it has caused some problems for us. Solid waste regularly have to go around to put the covers of the bins on, etc., because people are going into the bins, destroying the bins, looking for these recyclables. Now, other people are employing guys on the street to go and pick these bins up so they can bring them to Camden Park. We've done some tests ourselves where we've got a single parent mother, and we funded her so she can go and help other people within her village to clean the bottles, and we showed her how to get dirty bottles and buy them at an inexpensive rate. We have 3 prices and bring them to us for the high.
So out of your business, you've been able to spawn another business for someone else.
Right, and that's what it's about, help giving them that rod so they can go help themselves.
So you're creating entrepreneurs.
Yeah, macro entrepreneurs, so to speak. We have collection points. So for those people that are in the rural districts, instead of who are unable to come to Camden Park or incur that cost of transportation to bring the empties to Camden Park, they get to a collection point that's within proximity.
Mm-hmm. And that whole idea of putting the bins in Kingston has been from a cry by the public that, in order to stop the issue of littering in Kingston, we need bins. There were some different opinions, even within the CWSA, where we felt like bins don't solve the problem. Because, even some of our own people, when they travel overseas, they would adhere to whatever rules is there, but they come back and they will litter quite easily. So, we had a symposium back in 2012, and we had a lot of stakeholders there. About 28 different agencies were represented. And one of the ideas that came out of that was that, okay, let's put some bins in Kingstown.
But since the bins have been placed there, what has that been like?
We've seen an increased use. We've seen some reduction of littering.
So that's positive.
Yes, the bins are sometimes half filled. And there are some hot spots, some areas, especially like at Peace Memorial Hall, where a lot of kids congregate. in front of Aunt Job's, Super J, that side going up close to CWSA. We see those are some hot spots, or maybe even along Back Street, where those bins are usually filled pretty quickly. But people have been using them, but we also see cases where right around the bins they're still littering when the bins are still half empty.
Can people be charged for this?
Well, yes, they can. We have a litter act in place since 1991.
But who's going to squeal on the litter?
Well, that is the problem. The enforcement of it has been a problem. We've met with the police and the public health department, and we are working on a ticketing system, just like what you have for the seat belts and for the no bottle policy kind of thing, where people can be fined almost immediately to help speed up the enforcement.
But then if that is going to happen, wouldn't it involve a case of perhaps employing a litter monitor? Who is going to monitor these things? Because you can't depend on public reports to ticket someone, can you?
Well, that may be what it evolves to, but we can start simply with the police, the traffic department. We do have a number of the officers on the street. Some Vincentians, to me, respond when they see certain things being prosecuted. I remember when they brought in the seatbelt law, a lot of people were saying, well, I'm not going to do that. I've never had a seatbelt in my vehicle before. But in a short while, we see van drivers buckling up. And if you can get van drivers to comply with traffic laws, that's a big plus. So I think if one person is prosecuted, one or two people, I think people will comply. It's just not nature, I think.
Well, what about the school children? How have they been responding?
Well, Dwight can tell you about that from his
the greater percentage of participation comes from the primary schools. I mean, by far, there's a big gap between primary versus secondary. We need them big time. Our intake is about a third when we initially started of the intake of plastics. But we have this initiative called On Your Marks, Get Set, Recycle. And it fell apart, but we're going to revive it. But during the implementation of that initiative, the primary schools competed and were beaten the secondary schools because of the equation that we worked. We had a dirty bottle and a clean bottle. Prep school being the largest population of all schools, if every kid placed a bottle in the bin, they would automatically win. So we came up with the dirty bottle, clean bottle formula. So that's why we had schools, small schools like Windsor, giving prep school and larger schools a run for their money. They actually were within the top 3.
So how does the dirty bottle, clean bottle campaign work?
They get 50 cents a kilo for the dirty bottle, and it was $4. It is $4.80 for the clean bottle.
Wow,
a big disparity.
Big incentive.
The lazy ones are in this case, right?
So even at that age, at a primary school age, you're trying to teach these kids the economics of good waste management. They're learning a business model from garbage. No longer is it seen as garbage, it's actually a resource you can actually.
But do you guys go into the schools and talk to them about these stuff?
Yeah, CWSA has a very elaborate primary schools program. Our public relations marketing department, they have officers that go into the schools and talk to the kids. And we even have a mascot called Gabby. We have a life-size version of mascot called Gabby that goes and that kids could relate to. He's like a garbage bin, you guys know him, very smiley. And he tries to encourage the kids to do the right thing. So that's been worked on.
Where's Gabby today? Gabby should be on the program.
We have a separate program. Gabby needs a program by himself. I think he's such a character and such a personality that.
With Gabby, we actually we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So at French's Gate, we have Gabby. There's a billboard there. So that's just another test. And looking at and thinking about how we could move forward with billboards, Gabby, and the recycling coming together. We also noticed that some parents are having their children bring bottles and understanding the economics of that way. They have bank accounts for them. So the children themselves now, they redeem these bottles and, whether it be a single parent mother, and they are able to, earn their own and their savings that way.
Mm-hmm. When you get these stuff, is it a problem like shipping them off if you can't get all, because as Winsbert had mentioned earlier in the program, if you collect all these stuff and you don't have a proper system in place where you can export them, what happens to the garbage? They end up have to go to the landfills and stuff.
Right, but that's true. But before that even happens, there's a process, and before we can mutilate these bottles, we have to account for everyone, right? Literally count them. For example, between the 8th of December of 2014 and the 11th, we pulled over 1.4 million bottles off the street.
Who counts these bottles?
Well, we have to. Yes, that's just the way it works. So these are some of the barriers that we face right now. If we can eliminate.
Why you have to count them? It's legislate. What is it? Why?
Well, there's a redemption program, and they have to be accounted for. So the depositor is someone who imports these items or produces them locally, right? So in order for them to get a refund on the deposit they've paid, we have to audit what we intake against what they've paid. So that's a process in itself. So we're looking at ways to make that a lot more effortless than it is
and
right
the
now.
levy is on each bottle, so like 50 cents per bottle.
Per bottle.
So you have to clear how much bottle you have to equate that to the amount.
Winsbert, all of this takes money. For you to do your collection, for Dwight to do his recycling, it all takes money. He has money now that he's putting back into his business from what he's earned. Is there any source of financing or grant funding for startups?
I would think that there should be. But how we fund our operation is through the funds that we charge on the water bill, $11 per household.
But if, for example, Dwight, in his expansion plans, wanted to access some grant funding, could he go to perhaps UNEP or UNDP and apply for funding?
I should think that there may be a door opening at some point, but I think he would need probably the government support or something to get that done.
Yeah, you see, right now with the bottlenecks that have been removed, we run into some speed bumps. The folks that we pay, right? If we can pay them, we know we've looked at ways of how we can increase the intake. We looked at ways of how we can have more people getting involved. Therefore, we end up with a cleaner environment. But we're just trying to catch our balance so things could work more harmoniously at the moment. The two government agencies have placed some instruments in place. Once all of the players are playing these instruments properly, then it funds itself. Because we're literally recycling. Before we can't put anything out if we don't get it in. So it's imperative that we can get our funds as quickly as possible. Our clients, I should say, get their funds as quickly as possible so we can get paid, so we can put it back out into the community.
Otherwise, what he's saying, Cleo, is that he does not need grant funding. Once the instruments that are in place work, they should.
Maybe not him, but
anyone.
You might need funding for your just to further your own operations. I mean, it could the need could arise at any time.
But Winsbert, if say for example somebody is home watching this program now and they'll be like flashlight in their head, ding ding, I want to get into this. How can they get in if they don't have the money to start up? Where can they access funds? How can they learn about the do's and the don'ts of getting into this business?
Yeah.
Well, let me just make this clear that I don't need money. It takes care of itself. This is part of the recycle process. Yeah, there's a deposit levy that's paid out there, and you have these depositors. It's their responsibility to harvest the environment to make sure that one item is removed from the environment. If we don't, it becomes detrimental. So we looked at possible ways of solving this, and it's right there. The solution is looking at us in our face. So it didn't start with a dime. It's just a matter of utilizing exactly what was there. So anybody can do this. I just happen to be one of the people that chose to step forward, and it's not longer theory.
Yeah. But how does it work? If somebody home is interested in doing it, how does it work? How do they make the first step? How do they get in touch with a contact? How do they know who would be interested in collecting this stuff? Who they ship it to?
We will be willing to partner with people out there. We're doing that right now with collection points. The more people can come forward, you don't have to be qualified. You just gotta be willing. You
don't have to be qualified.
You just have to be willing. So with Dwight as a resource and the solid waste management unit as a resource, that's a good starting point.
Yes.
What do you see as the future of solid waste management?
Well, we have to continue our efforts to move more and more into modernizing our service. I think we have to do some more work to get the basic service done properly in terms of make sure that we have proper equipment for our landfill, make sure that we put in a more sustainable system in the Grenadines. and then make sure that we continue to educate and to encourage private sector involvement. So I think once the future is get the basic service done properly, so that it's clockwork all the time. We're not worrying about running out of landfill space, and then we move into, other areas as well, and even into waste energy recovery from the garbage. Because you can recover energy from the garbage, methane gas. You can generate electricity from incineration or biogas from the breakdown of organic material. And we can help to contribute to sustainable energy in our country. So
and in your final words,
future.
Winsbert, what gives you hope to continue?
I think just the way our country is founded. Our country is founded on preserving the environment. If you listen to the national anthem, it says, it's an environmental song. That's all it is. It just talks about the environment.
That's so patriotic.
Yeah.
That's what it takes.
America, for example, they're founded on being a country that will conquer those who oppose them. And I think our country is founded on being true to our environment. Yeah. So I think it gives me hope if we listen to that and internalize it and become it as Vincentians. I think we'll get where we want to go.
And if I may, there are folks out there who started this without a dime, right? So the folks who actually mine and harvest this stuff, the guy or the gal who chose to take that empty out of the gutter, the waterway itself, they themselves are entrepreneurs in some form or fashion. They now bring it to a center where they earn money from it. They go out there and they start their own crew, right?
So
that's
folks,
patriotism.
The short word is there's value in your rubbish. This has been Perspectives. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.